So I wanted to shift gears a little bit. I mean, you talked about a couple things with the pandemic wiping out the season, and I wondered. I mean, back to kind of a previous question about how life is different for the service academy athletes versus a regular student athlete. So, do they have redshirt seasons? Do they do medical exemptions for service academy athletes, or is it 4 years in, and then you're out?
Yeah, good question. And medical exemptions are rare. They don't happen that often. The last time I remember it happening, although it's probably happened at least once since then, or twice perhaps, but I just don't recall. Napoleon McCallum, when he was a senior, suffered a broken ankle in his first two games, and the academy administration allowed him an extra year of eligibility so he could play, which was great because we ended up beating Army that year. Probably wouldn't have beat him without him. but anyway, um, they do happen. They're rare. The closest thing to a redshirt season is probably, you have some football players who end up going to the prep school, which is up in Providence, Rhode Island, and they can play football up there. Obviously, not playing against other colleges. It's almost like kind of junior varsity or something like that. But that's just a year that they can kind of sharpen up their skills without burning a year of eligibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I mean, even this year they had a guy. In fact, he was one of our captains as a senior. His name was Jake Busick. He petitioned for an extra year because of an injury, and they didn't let him do it. And then
Mm-hmm.
what he did, he ended up. I was kind of hoping he wouldn't do it, but he did. He had every right to. He entered the transfer portal, and he's going to go over to finish up his last year of eligibility at UCLA, which is kind of a drag because now he owes a boatload of money to the Navy.
Oh,
And I'll explain how that works. If you go
yeah,
to the
please
Naval
do.
Academy, if you go there and you decide before you start your third year, before you start your junior year, if you decide that you don't want to go anymore, you can leave the academy with no strings attached and go on your merry way and do whatever you want to do. Okay. But as soon as you come back and start your junior year, then you are basically committed to a 5-year service commitment following graduation. We call it 2 for 7. And that's what Busick was subject to. Now, the fact is, when you think about the compensation that is probably owed to the Navy for 2 years, we'll call it 2 years of education, you're talking at least, close to $200,000, I would say, just for 2 years. And it's probably more than that. It's probably a fairly conservative guess.
Mm-hmm.
So somehow, some way, they've got to come to some sort of agreement on how that money gets paid back. Now, who knows? Maybe with any kind of NIL stuff, UCLA figures out a way to make that happen, and take the burden off the family. But that's what he's looking at, and which is kind of a drag. And I think that really pained him to make that decision. But the bottom line was, I guess he really, really wanted to play football, and uh, I was hoping that the academy would be a little bit more flexible, because the fact is, he wasn't even scheduled to start his school at the Marine Corps down at Quantico until the spring of 2025. So he,
He would have, yeah, but
yeah, he would have
just been
been
idle,
done with
kind
the
of.
season
Yeah.
and been ready to go, and that would have been it. But it just didn't happen that way, unfortunately. And the sad thing is, West Point and Air Force, they kind of figure out ways to extend their athletes as much as they possibly can. Um, Navy, not so much. And I'm saying that probably 80 to 90% of the time, it doesn't really matter. But every so often, you might have the one player who, man, I wish you could hang on to that guy for one more
Mm-hmm.
year. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
that's
and,
just
and
the
you
way it
mentioned
goes.
the 2 for 7 thing and the commitment after graduation. One thing that comes to mind is there's been some high profile ish players that have applied for like a waivers. Is it
Hmm.
a when they if they're entering the NFL draft or the NBA draft or something like that? I don't. It doesn't seem like it's that common for that waiver to be granted. Am I right in saying that?
You're correct. It's not something that happens often. I think there was a time there where there were some arrangements that could be made between the Navy and whatever team has an interest in that player, where they might be able to work something out. I mean, you can go all the way back to, like I said, Napoleon McCallum. But also, there's another guy named Eddie Myers who played running back, and he was able to work something out where he would play, with the Falcons, and then do his time as a Marine, like in some sort of reserve capacity or whatever. A lot of that depends on who's in charge, whether you're talking
Mm.
about the academy administration or whoever the secretary of the Navy is. Okay, that is really going to determine largely how those waivers get uh, approved or disapproved. The last person of note that got cleared to at least give the NFL a shot was Malcolm Perry, who was
Yeah, I was going
Navy's
to ask about
quarterback
him.
that last
Yeah.
year. He ended up getting drafted by Miami and played pretty well for him too, and ended up finishing up his last game with them with a touchdown reception from Tua. But he got hurt the next year, was released, hooked on with New Orleans, hooked on with New England, but never really was able to, crack that, get off the practice squad. And then he said, well, I've had my chance, and now he's in the Marines and doing his thing. So
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, I figured it wasn't that common. From what I've understood, it's like exceptional circumstances or an exceptional player that's going to get
yeah.
definitely drafted and have a career, and then they can figure out some other way to serve, whether it's in a. I think they use it. They said not maybe not promotional, but doing recruiting things like that. So it's not
Oh
quite
yeah.
active
I
duty, but
yeah, and I think that that's a really good thing to explore.
hmm.
And the best example I can give you is David Robinson. Okay,
Yeah, for sure.
he was class of '87. In fact, I actually had a chance to meet him when I was a senior and he was a freshman. He won't remember this, but I actually had him at a watch inspection. I had to make sure his uniform was all squared away and everything before he stood watch. But anyway, um, he was what did he end up doing? He ended up going civil engineering, and he did
Hmm.
that for 2 years on active duty. And then he did the balance of his time as a reservist with the agreement that he would do what he could to promote the Navy and so forth when he was in San Antonio. And he just did a fabulous job. I mean, if you're talking about a blueprint for just figuring out how Navy athletes can work together with their professional teams to promote the service and really bring more exposure to the school, it's him. He just did a fabulous job, and what are we talking here? Two-time NBA champ, defensive player of the year, MVP, Olympic gold medalist, dream teamer.
Yeah.
You can't ask for a better spokesperson,
So
than
just be an all time
than
great. That's all you got to do.